You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers about hikers for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hi guys, and thanks for coming back to the show. This is Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. And every week we chat with somebody or bodies who have been impacted by hiking. Often this is hiking on the Appalachian Trail, but sometimes our guests introduce other trails to you. My job as the host is to try and tell our guest stories as best I can. I'm always prepared for the show by having an initial conversation with each guest, but sometimes they'll say things that lead me down an entirely different path, much like hiking in fact. Today we have a recent AT completer. Shannon Shaver was part of a group of hikers who set out with the group Warrior Expeditions, and she tells us about that and her own hike. She also had a great summit picture, something we talk about in our conversation. Shannon will be on shortly. Also today, Katie Westling has had to make a difficult decision, though, as you'll hear, it is for the very best of reasons. We'll hear from Katie after Shannon. Then Winton Porter's book, Passing Through, will tell you about a snow day at mountain crossings, which is interrupted by a very worried wife. And I have something else to tell you about just before I read Winton's book, so hang around for that. So let's get on. Here's Shannon Shaver, or Feather Blue. So this week, we've got somebody who recently published an epic Katahdin picture on Facebook. This is Shannon Shaver. Hey, Shannon, how are you?
Good. Thanks for having me on, Steve.
Well, we've had a few issues trying to get recording here, but it seems to be working out right now, which is great. And your picture was really dramatic. It was in black and white. One of the few I've actually seen in black and white. I loved it. Did it sum up the drama of your hike, do you think?
I hope it did the drama of it. It was such a windy day up there that I actually didn't like most of my summit pictures, and that one actually caught me off guard when I had a stranger take it for me.
Isn't that funny? I hiked in 2019 with my friend Trigger, and I said to him about 300 or 400 miles before the end, which was probably preempting it a bit, I said, it's really important to think about your summit picture. Be ready for it, because you're going to be living with that idiot shouting on the top of the side for the rest of your life. So and funnily enough, he took mine. I was unhappy with all of my pictures, and yet he took my one, the very last one that was taken. So I was really delighted with that. So your one that was really was the black and white a thing you deliberately did, or was it just taken in black and white?
So I switched it to black and white, and like I said, it was so windy that I was actually trying to tuck my shirt in when a complete stranger just sort of caught me off guard, and it wasn't even a planned picture. I have probably 10 other pictures that I like, but they were a little bit more staged.
Yeah, nice. I like the naturalness of that one. So let's go back to what you were doing out there in the first place. You've served your country in the military, and you started the AT in 2020. So where had you served in the past?
So I was in the Minnesota Army National Guard in a finance unit, and I was in for about 9 years out of high school, and I served on 2 deployments. The first one was over in Bosnia on Eagle Base, and then I was in Camp Taji in Iraq in 04, 05.
Oh, wow. So you told me that you suffered from PTS. How did that happen?
I have to admit I'm not the best passenger in a vehicle usually. We were going from one base to another to provide finance support, and we just hit a bad patch of black ice and kind of took us off the road. So I much prefer to be in hiking boots than to be a passenger in a vehicle.
Cool. I bet that remains to this day then. So when did you actually get out of the military then, or are you still part of the National Guard?
So, no, I've been out since 2009, so I've been away from it for quite some time.
And was the AT on your radar at that time, or, how did you come to hear about the AT?
I didn't know much about the AT until probably 4 years ago. So it really wasn't on my radar until then. I didn't know a whole lot about it until I started reading books and seeing movies, and it just sort of sucked me in.
Yeah. And what were you doing then in that period of time after you left the military? What have you been doing? Because we did talk about this, obviously, and one of the things you said to me, you were a kind of a part-time drifter, which is a strange expression. So what does that mean?
Yeah, I do refer to myself as a bit of a vagabond. So I basically, when I left the military, I went and taught English over in South Korea and sort of played around with teaching for a while. And I came back and taught in Minneapolis and sort of always just had an adventurous spirit. And it just usually takes me away in the summertime, whether it's hiking or traveling in the van. I didn't know much about hiking until probably 2014, 2015 is when I really got into it.
And was that when you saw the movie The Way? Because I know, because most people talk about the Bill Bryson book as being having an effect upon them. Tell us about seeing The Way.
So, yeah, I don't even remember how I came across the movie. I think I was just kind of bored one night and looking for a movie that had to do with traveling. And,
Right.
and so I watched this movie and I couldn't stop thinking about hiking the Camino. And it was probably just a year later from after I saw the movie when I had my eyes set on the Camino. And as soon as I got done teaching, I took off for the summer and went and did that that was my first ever sort of hike abroad or hike on a trail.
And how was that? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the Camino. It's, well, as you know, on the Appalachian Trail, you meet so many different people. And on the Camino, you're just meeting people from all over the world.
Yes.
And there's it's a bit of a language barrier. So it's kind of interesting for me to speak in my broken Spanish and have them try to speak to me in English. And, I think it's always the people you meet on the trail as much as the journey itself.
Oh, absolutely. And the Camino is a great example of that as well. But walking across northern Spain, English is not a preferred language, is it?
No.
Americans and the English are incredibly lazy when it comes to other languages. We expect everybody else. We kind of go into some remote Spanish pub or bar and expect them to understand what we're talking about, don't we? Or we just speak
Right.
English louder.
Right.
So how did that hike go then? Did you team up with people or did you just do the whole thing by yourself?
Yeah, so it took me about 31 days. I think I only maybe took one day off. And I went with a woman that I met here in Minneapolis.
Right.
And she had the luxury to be able to take that much time off of work. So her and I set off together. And we ended up hiking with two other gentlemen, one from Canada and one from here in the States. So we actually I had my first taste of sort of a tramily, as they call it, when I hiked the Camino.
I think Camino is a great place to have a tramily as well, because you do pitch up every night at a hotel or a hostel or somewhere like that. And you can all sit around and have a meal and a drink together and actually have a shower, which is kind of nice as well, isn't it?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Was the walking cathartic for you, or what was it doing for you?
On the Camino, or
yeah. I mean on the Camino, really, because that obviously sparked something with you to do other things.
Yeah, just to be outside all day, I guess, is kind of what drew me in. And I wouldn't say the Camino is necessarily a difficult hike, or people refer to it as more of a pilgrimage or a walk.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of countryside. You're kind of going from sort of one town to another and seeing the history over there, all the different churches that you can go in. And there's so much that just happens along the way that you don't even plan for. For example, we just happened to be in Pamplona when they did the running of the bulls.
Oh, really? Oh,
and
did you do it?
I didn't. The Canadian gentleman that was with us did it. He went and bought the white clothing and the red sash, and the other three of us watched safely from the stadium at the end of it. But it's definitely something you can't plan for. We had no reservation. We just walked in and we somehow ended up getting the last 4 beds at the hostel just down the road.
Wow, that is awesome. So you got to Santiago, which in itself is a wonderful place to go to. Did you go to the Pilgrim's Mass the next day as well?
I didn't. A friend of mine did, but I was going to visit another friend up in Czech Republic where she was at the time.
All right. So after the Camino, you started researching backpacking and reading more stuff. And as you know, the Camino and the AT are entirely different. Were you looking for a tougher challenge, or did the Camino bring the AT more into your mind?
The Camino definitely brought the AT more into mind. Just the simplicity of living out of a backpack is what I really liked about the Camino. And I always grew up sort of camping. I was a bit of a tomboy when I was younger. And so I just thought, wow, hiking the Appalachian Trail, I can combine the two things I really enjoy, and that's hiking, being outside, and then camping. It's just, as you know, you're carrying, I don't know, probably almost double the amount of weight just having the extra gear. So I started off pretty slow. And the same friend of mine that hiked the Camino, I was able to kind of draw her in and do a bunch of research with her. And we started just buying the gear and taking it on some just kind of leisurely trails here in Minnesota, and sort of worked our way out to the Appalachian Trail.
Yeah, and I know that we had a conversation about this the other day, and I got kind of confused with the timeline, because I know that you also did the Superior Hiking Trail, which turned out to be a bit of a shakedown for your AT hike. What was that like, and what did it teach you? What do you think you needed to know to be ready for the AT?
Well, this is kind of embarrassing, and I'm surprised I'm admitting it, but I actually had my first shakedown hike 4 years ago, and that was on the Appalachian Trail. We flew out to Asheville, and we hiked, I think it was about 120 miles through. We landed in Hot Springs and flew out of Johnson City. And it was on that first ever shakedown hike I realized I didn't need to bring nail polish with me.
Of course you did.
It's definitely been a bit of a learning process. And her and I were actually able, between the two of us, to I think we sent home somewhere between 10 and 12 pounds once we realized we had all this extra gear and clothing and, just the extra luxury items that we definitely didn't need.
Isn't that something you quickly learn, though, isn't it? You just really need
definitely.
The stuff on your back is all you should be taking is exactly what you need. And
exactly.
The reason people take too much, I think, is because they worry they won't have anything to do. Frankly, I've done hiking, I just wanted to eat and sleep most of the time. So
yeah.
So you did, you did that. And then it still took another 4 years to come to the AT. But then when did you do the Superior Hiking Trail then?
So after we got off in 2020 due to COVID, I had previously started it in that year.
Right.
And I just still have kind of the itch. I had the hiking bug, and I had the summer pretty much free before I had to go back to work. And I just thought, well, what can I do that's kind of in my own backyard. It was probably about a 3 or 4 hour drive north of where I live in northern Minnesota. And I took about 3.5 weeks to do a 310-mile hike. It started just at the Canadian-Minnesota border and ended at the Wisconsin-Minnesota border.
Nice.
And so that was a bit of a long shakedown hike. And luckily I had my car. I was able to kind of hide my car at one of the state parks up here and sort of get into it every now and then to resupply food and switch out different clothing, as the temperatures changed, or I had extra gear I realized I didn't need.
Good planning. Now, so you mentioned that you tried to do the AT in 2020 and that you had to get off because of COVID, but there was a reason you had to get off. Tell us about the Warrior Expeditions. Is there a stated goal? Well, tell us about the organization first.
Sure. So Warrior Expedition is a nonprofit for military combat veterans, and they outfit, I want to say, about 40 military veterans every year, the Appalachian Trail being the most popular of the expeditions, and then they do the CDT, the PCT, and some other shorter state trails, as well as a Mississippi paddle and a cross-country bike trip.
Wow.
And so
Mississippi
travel.
Mississippi paddle must be quite a mission.
Yeah, I would love to do that one someday.
Yeah. Is there a stated goal? I mean, what are they trying to achieve with these expeditions?
So the motto is, if any of you have read Earl Schaefer's book, is to sort of walk off the war.
Sure.
To sort of get into nature and connect with nature and sort of build a trust again with other people after you've maybe been through some not so great experiences in the past.
Right.
And they sort of give you I want to say sort of a 101 sort of classroom training, how to use the gear, how to nourish your body when you're doing these expeditions. Yeah, so that's their motto. They outfit you with all the gear, and there's a bit of an application process. You do a paper application, and then they sort of, you do a one-way interview, and then they sort of narrow it down and offer you a slot if you're available.
No, I'm I'm not available, and I'm not ex-military either, and I'm too damn old. So, how were you chosen then?
You know, I want to believe it's because I already had a little bit of hiking experience, but it's definitely not necessary to have it. But I think that definitely helps when they're selecting people to participate in the program.
Right. Okay. So, what were you hoping to get out of your hike then? Is this something you just wanted to go for a hike, or did you feel you needed to walk something off?
You know, I had planned on doing the Appalachian Trail before I was chosen with Warrior Expedition.
Oh, winner, chicken dinner.
So it was definitely 100% an added bonus that I was chosen. Just knowing that we had supporters out there along the trail every 40 to 100 miles. We were lined up with a different supporter along the entire Appalachian Trail. And so we were a bit spoiled in the fact that they would pick us up and bring us back and let us do our laundry and shower, feed us, and let us sleep in a nice, comfortable bed. So we were a little bit spoiled in that aspect. And just knowing there was kind of people out there that had my back, you know, if anything were to happen, I could call them up at any time. And I think they take the shirt off their back to help me when I was out there.
So are these people associated with the project or the expedition, or are they just local volunteers? Because you had that support all the way up the trail, didn't you?
Right. So it's a bit of a mix. When I hiked it this year in 2021, some were doing it for their first time, and others had been doing it since the start of the organization in 2013.
Wow.
And Sean Gobin, he's the founder of the organization. He, when he got back from his overseas deployment as a Marine in Iraq, he decided to just throw on a rucksack and start hiking. And so he, along the way, sort of met all these people, and he had help reaching out to different VFWs and American Legions. And I don't know how he did it, but it's pretty awesome how he's met all these people and connected us to this help along the way. And, you know, he's written different newspaper articles and different social media outlets where people actually find out about the organization, and they reach out to him and volunteer their time and energy.
Wow, I think that's an amazing I never knew that. I've heard of the project, but I didn't know it was as extensive as that. I think it's tremendous. So, but as you said, you started last year as well as this year. How far did you get in 2020?
So in 2020, we made it to Hiawassee, and I want to say it was roughly 70 miles. We did the approach trail.
Right.
So with all that, I think we were about 70 miles in. And, you know, unfortunately, we had to get off just because, you know, the COVID, the pandemic. And in order to come back this year, we did have to get the vaccine, just since we are exposed to a lot of elderly people and just traveling from small town to small town where you have to pop in and do your resupply and things like that. Right.
So 70 miles, you got to Hiawassee. 70 miles is a significant amount. You know, it's not in terms of the AT, it's only about 3%, but, you know, it is quite a significant amount. Did you find you were really enjoying it when you had to get off, or was it a bit of a struggle for you?
You know, to be honest, I felt pretty prepared. I didn't find it to be much of a struggle because I had already done quite a bit of backpacking on my own. I don't want to put words in other people's mouths, but I think it was a bit of a challenge for some of the other hikers that hadn't really done any backpacking before. Just sort of figuring out, you know, what footwear works and, you know, just sizing the pack correctly. And that's where with Warrior Expedition, they were actually there to shadow us for the first 7 to 10 days.
But what does that entail? What does that entail?
So basically, so they have 2 vehicles that they drive that support us. Right. And so they would drive from trailhead to trailhead.
Wow.
And just kind of check in, like, how are your feet? Are you remembering to eat? You know, are you eating, keeping your body fueled like once an hour, once every 2 hours? And then they actually sent out 2 volunteers with us. Actually, a good friend of mine, Allison Garrigus, who came out and did the summit with me this year.
Uh-huh.
She was one of the 2 volunteers, and they hike with us, they camp with us, make sure we know how to use all the gear, and they're just there to answer our questions.
Wow, that is awesome. I said, my buddy of mine wrote a book about platinum blazing the Appalachian Trail, but you appear to have done that through this, which is wonderful, by the way. I think it's a terrific thing. So when you went again, now I know COVID's not over, but you started again this year. Did you consider starting from Hiawassee, or are you one of these people who feels that you wanted to get back to the beginning again?
Yeah, I'm definitely more of a traditionalist in the fact that I wanted to do the entire Appalachian Trail within that 1 calendar year.
Right.
And then we had started last year with 10 people. This year, I think about 6 of the 10 came back, along with 3 new people.
Right.
So just to stay together as a group, we decided just to start all over again.
Right. So you all started again. Another 70. 70 miles is a lot of extra miles to do, isn't it? It really is. So did you stay together with your other warriors? Because a group of 10 together is a lot to be traveling together. How did that work out?
Right. So we stayed together, I think probably for about the first 10 days or so we stayed together. It was actually kind of interesting. We had a quilt ceremony in the town of Franklin, where it was a group that they make quilts every year for the warrior expedition hikers that come through, and they do
Nice.
a kind of a ceremony and present us with the quilts.
Nice.
And then after that, we're sort of free to go on our own. And, even then we still kind of stay together for the first week or so. And then just different schedules and abilities and speeds kind of took most of us in different directions over time.
Right. And did you find yourself going on ahead with one other person or 2, or just by yourself?
Yeah, I'd say I did a third of the trail with another girl from the program, and then I did about a third of the trail solo, and then I had a tramily for about a third of the trail.
That's a nice mix. I think that's a really good mix.
Mm-hmm.
Which did you prefer?
It was.
Which did you prefer?
I'm not gonna. There's something about solo hiking. I mean, it's nice to have people to talk to throughout the day, or at the beginning of the day, or the end of the day. But, a lot of people ask me, aren't you scared to go solo? And to be honest, even when you're hiking with other people, you're still on your own quite a bit. And
Yes.
I think over time, your confidence just builds in going on your own.
Are you comfortable sleeping away from shelters by yourself?
I do. I prefer to sleep away from shelters in my tent. And, people say, aren't you scared to sleep alone? And I always joke that the bears don't go to where there's no people. The bears go to the shelters. So I prefer to sleep on my own. Usually, if I can find water, like a stream or a river or a pond, is usually my preference.
Did you have any encounters? Any animal encounters when you were out there to disprove that theory?
My closest encounter was at the motel when one jumped out of the dumpster. The bear.
That's hilarious. Oh, dear. So what did the hike give you that you may not have had before, or did it bring out something in you that was already there?
So I think this answer will kind of surprise a lot of people who know me, but I've always had that adventurous wanderlust where I always want to go somewhere and do something different. And to be honest, I was just really excited to come home at the end of it and just sort of get back into my home routine. I was in a bit of pain towards the end, and a lot of people come home and they get kind of sad that the hike is over. And for me, it was just sort of a nice finish, knowing that I was finishing the trail and I got to come home. And my first week back, I got to come back and go to my cousin's wedding and see family that I hadn't seen in probably almost 2 years.
Did they notice differences in you?
They definitely thought my legs looked stronger.
Oh dear! But did they see in you changes?
Not that anything's been mentioned, I guess. And I think a part of that has to do with the fact that this isn't really my first time leaving home, between the military doing different deployments and traveling and teaching abroad. This is just kind of another sort of blip in my timeline of doing something crazy.
Another crazy thing that Shannon does. Oh, she's off again.
Yeah. Yep.
Now, my trail name is Mighty Blue, and you're Feather Blue, and us blue boys and girls need to sit together. So how come the old softie is Mighty Blue and the warrior is Feather?
Well, I got the trail name because of my backpack, which was a big blue granite gear backpack, and I had sewn a bunch of feathers on it, and people threw out ideas, well, feather or blue, and I actually have a big blue bubble van at home that I take out on adventures, and I just kind of like the combination of feather blue together, and it just sort of stuck with me.
Nice one. And I'd already mentioned your dramatic summit picture. I want to come back to your summit in a minute. But I also saw one of you doing a headstand on McAfee Knob. Do not try this at home, folks, by the way. What were you celebrating?
So I turned 40 on the trail, and, I think I quoted the picture with heading into 40 with a bang.
When I looked at that, I thought, oh, my God, crazy. I mean, you could have easily stumbled over there. That wasn't good at all for me, I'll tell you. So you head into 40. That's interesting. So at this age, so the age didn't matter to you because if you're a kind of, as you said, a part-time drifter, so going away at 40 didn't make any difference to you because you could do different things and you've done different things in your life work-wise. How different do you think it would be to go as a youngster or as an older person? Because the 40s, the late 30s, early 40s, is quite an unusual demographic to be out there, isn't it?
Right. I know it's definitely kind of the minority in the age groups. And, I think had I done it at a younger age, it probably would have been a little bit gentler on my body. But it also would have been a little bit of a different experience just because I wouldn't have had my previous life experiences that I have now with the military background. And, at this age, I'm a little bit more financially stable. We're not having to live off of ramen noodles on the trail. But, and I guess, going at an older age, sort of the same reason. I sort of wanted to do it at a younger age while my body allows me to do it.
Yeah, don't try. Don't do it in your 60s. Don't do it in your 60s. It really hurts then. So tell us about your summit day then. What was that? You went from south to north, and you did it. Went through the 100-mile wilderness, and you see Katahdin from Abel Bridge, which is just an awesome sight to see. Tell us about the day. Did you go up by yourself with friends, and how did that work out?
It was actually, like I said, things just come together without really planning it. My good friend Allison, she flew out. She literally biked across the country with Warrior Expedition. Came home, and less than a week later, she flew out to Maine, where she did the last 10 days with me. She did the 100-mile wilderness, and, she kind of mentally prepared me what to expect for the summit. And we just we had been hiking with a couple other women, and one of them wanted to summit with us for safety. And then another gentleman who goes by the trail named Water just happened to be there at the same time, and along with another couple. And what made it really memorable is we all camped together. We called it Summit Eve. And I think we were all just like giddy children. Like it was like we were getting ready for Christmas Day the next day. I mean, we stayed up later than we should, which was probably only 10 o'clock at night, having a bonfire and playing music and just sharing stories. And then, with the anxiety of it, we probably didn't get a lot of sleep like most kids on Christmas. And we just woke up and packed up and just hit the trail. And so when we got up there, 4 of us got up roughly around the same time. So one of my other favorite summit pictures is the 4 of us up there at the same time at the Mount Katahdin sign.
Yeah. And what did you think of that climb? Because it's certainly more than you've seen before, but you've got 2,000 miles on your legs by then.
Right.
And you're fit anyway. So how did you find it?
Yeah, I couldn't imagine doing that climb without having trail legs ahead of time.
No.
And, just the steepness of it. To be honest, I didn't find it too much more treacherous than what some of us, what we saw when hiking through the Whites. But, just some of the grab bars that you had and sort of hoist your whole body up and swing it up there. And luckily, being a little bit taller, I didn't have too many issues with it. But what struck me was just how windy it was. I mean, the wind was enough just to blow you off your feet.
Yeah. It can be quite dramatic. But you said you were kind of looking forward to getting back to your normal life. So was it a feeling?
Right.
Was it a feeling of relief when you touched the sign, or thank God that's over?
I feel like the end of the hike almost hit me more in the 100-mile wilderness, just because I knew I was so close to the end.
Yeah.
So I think emotionally, I was a little bit more on edge going through the 100-mile wilderness. And it was actually coming out of that right before I walked across Able Bridge that I thought, this is it. I did it. Even though I hadn't quite finished yet. In my mind, the hike was almost ending as I emerged from the wilderness.
Yeah. Now, this Warrior Expeditions, which I say I'd kind of heard of, didn't know what it was or how it worked. Would you so anybody who's served, is that basically anybody who's served can apply to do this?
Anyone that served in a combat zone can apply to the program.
Right. Okay. We're gonna if I can find a link for it, I'm going to put a link in the show notes because I'm sure a lot of people aren't aware of this and what amazing support that is. Do you think you could have done it without that support?
I think I could have done it without the support, but I don't think I would have finished quite as fast as I did. They kind of take the logistical planning and make it a little bit easier for you, just knowing we might have a ride waiting or a warm shower and a hot meal to go to. So I think I could have done it, but it definitely, it would have been a completely different experience. I probably would have met quite a few other thru hikers because I was sort of, as thru hikers were going off to stay in a hostel or a hotel together as a group, I was running off and staying in a different place on my own half the time.
Interesting. So that's an interesting dynamic. So you did miss out on some of the things that go on in a thru hike, but you had your own experience. So that's great. And has the AT whetted your appetite for more adventures like this, or are you done right now?
There's always future adventures. I don't think it'll be anytime soon that I have my eyes set on a 2,200-mile hike over 6 months. Yes. But, I'd love to go out to the Apostle Islands and kind of do shorter hikes and over a week out there.
Where's that?
I've actually been in.
Where's that?
It's just on Lake Superior, off of Wisconsin. Wow. And you basically take a boat over there and can kind of hike around and camp. And then I've been invited to do the Bruce Trail in Canada next fall with an all women's crew. And it was actually Fire Goddess. She was one of my Tramley members. She's going to be leading a group of women. Her motto is to encourage and inspire others who want to get into adventurous hikes like this and maybe don't have the background or the knowledge quite yet. And she's invited me along to sort of help lead the hike, as you will, and be there to help other people.
Well, look, I'd love you to come back on and tell us about that when you do that. So
sure.
But I really appreciate you bearing with the technological issues we've had today to try to get this done. And I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And I have to give one shout out to the ladies on the Appalachian Trail. We started out with 4 women to hike the Appalachian Trail with Warrior Expedition, and the ladies are all going to finish this year, so I think that's great.
I always say that. The women do sensible things. The men are dumb, and they screw up, they get injured and things like that. So shout out to the ladies, yeah. Okay, well, lovely to have you on the show, and hopefully we'll speak again soon.
All right, thank you, Steve.
Cheers then. Bye.
Bye.
I'd heard of Warrior Expeditions, but I simply didn't realise how extensive and supportive it actually is. What a support network. And you know how important it is to have support out there on a long-distance trail. If some of you qualify like Shannon and want to become one of the hikers for the 22 or 23 Appalachian Trail, I've added the link in the show notes. And remember what I said, if you're out there hiking and you're getting somewhere near the end, just remember that the picture you take is the one you're going to have to live with for the rest of your life. So make it a good one and give it some thought. I still look at both of mine daily. I've got to tell you, I look pretty damn great in them. A few more of you have reached out asking me to sell my books at this year's Trail Days rate of $31 for all 3, including postage. If you want them, mail me a check payable to Mighty Blue Publishing to P.O. Box 6161, Sun City Center, Florida 33571. And I'll sign them for you and send them on their way. Now, it's Katie, who had to make a gut-wrenching decision this week after a really, really long day in the Wildcats. Here's Katie. So we're back on with Katie. Hey, Katie, how are you?
Hey, Steve. I'm doing all right.
Now,
I think as well as I can expect out of myself.
Well, those of you who've been those of you who've been following Katie on YouTube will know that she's had a slight change of plan. But before we talk about that, I want to talk to you first about the lunatic 21 miles through it was a
Wildcat.
The Wildcats, sorry, not Wildcats, through the Wildcats. How did that go? Because it's a tough climb anyway.
Yeah, some people describe it as one of the harder climbs in the Whites, and you know, I look back at it and I'm just grateful everything worked out. To describe it as lunatic is a very polite way to describe it. We were offered an opportunity to slack pack 21 miles. And at that time, I thought the weather looked okay. I knew the days were short. I knew we would, be hiking in the dark at some point.
Sure.
So started around 5:30, and I was still hiking at that time with my partner, Ginger. And we started at 5:30, and we're making pretty good miles, I think, until about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, starting to get a little tired.
It was getting cold by then as well, wasn't it?
Well, it had been chilly the whole time.
Right.
It had been on and off, a little misty. We did stop at, I think it was called Carter Notch Shelter, and had some hot tea.
Right.
And then on that last peak, and I can't for the life of me remember the name of it, it was, we were going northbound from Pinkham Notch. I think it's Route 2. Not sure.
Yeah, it is Route 2, yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's where Gorham is anyway.
Right. So that's where we were coming out.
That's a long way, Katie. That is a heck of a long way.
It was already dark before we started, as we were ascending the peak. And then it started just kind of drizzly rain. And then by the time we were on the peak, it was sleeting.
Right.
And it took us, because it was dark, and we're both older women. And so, and I don't say that to diss older women, I am one, but you have to be careful with every football.
Sure.
And, you're paying very close attention. And it took us 6 hours to get from the peak down to Route 2.
6
and
hours?
So
how many miles was that then?
6. It was about 6. It was about 6. Yeah. And it just was so slow going. And
so
it
what time did
down
what time did you finish then?
midnight.
Oh my! So you've been going literally for 19 hours.
Since it turned out it was something. It was after midnight, so it's somewhere around 20 hours.
So
was the total. And I know
were there tears? Were there tears?
No, you didn't have time for tears, Steve. You're watching what you're doing.
I have plenty of time for tears myself.
You're counting steps, and then so the next day, just kind of rested, and I started checking the weather for the Whites and the rest of it, and we were going to go over Mount Madison the following day.
That's a tough one.
Yeah, Madison, and then the next day after that would have been Washington.
Yeah, that's right.
And so, there's like 5-day forecast of not above 31, 32 degrees on those exposed peaks. And so I thought about it. It just tormented me. And I thought, well, I can spend 5 days trying to hold out over this, because I really don't. I mean, I have good gear for late fall, but these were winter conditions.
Absolutely.
And I don't have the gear for that. And so I just, it was a hard decision, but I made the decision I would skip over that, and I'm skipping about 100 miles of the whites,
Right.
and I'm already now. I jumped on at Lyme,
Right.
New Hampshire,
Sure.
and I'm a good way into Vermont now.
Yeah.
Heading
Cheers.
to Manchester Center, and so I'm going to be at Gifford State Park this afternoon, and from there I'm just I've got a flight out on Sunday to head down to the section that I finished when I had that stress fracture.
Yeah.
Back in April. So
how do you feel? How do you feel? Well, hang on, before you tell me how you feel, because I know you feel. I know you. Hang on, I will ask you about it in a second.
I know.
I want to know. Did you have that conversation? Did you have the conversation in your mind, or did you have that conversation with Ginger, or was it just a personal decision that you chose to do? And did she carry on?
Okay, so after looking at the weather, after knowing that my body was still exhausted from that lunatic day.
Actually, I think I understated it in that case.
So she was going to go ahead and go forward, and she did for a day, but I got a text and she never went above tree line, and she's off trail. So she cashed in and had to do it. And, it would have been just crazy to try to do that section now. So.
Well, look, can I say to you?
Sure.
When you said you were going to do this 21 miles, I'm in your corner. Every decision you make, I'd be very supportive. Not that it should matter to you, but I want to be supportive in every way I can. But it immediately struck me that you were hiking someone else's hike, and that is such an error to do for anybody. You've got to do the hike you're comfortable with. So when you made that decision, I immediately texted you and said, "Good decision," because you made that. 21 miles is a lot for a youngster, or I mean, as you say, you don't want to diss older hikers, certainly, and older hikers have done 21 miles, but 21 miles there in crappy weather. Oh my God, Katie, that was just a nightmare. To spend all those hours doing it as well. You were hiking someone else's hike. You wouldn't have. Put it another way, had you been by yourself, would you have done 21 miles?
Because and this is what I, said to my partner is, had we done 2 10-mile days with no zero, we would have still gained the same mileage.
Sure.
And that's what I hope hikers recognize. You can do, I ran into a young man who he looked like he was in his early 30s, sitting on the top of Mount Hayes before we even got into Gorham.
Sure.
And he looked spent. And he said, we were already thinking about doing that flat pack. And he said, it was the hardest thing I've ever done. And he just looked like he was just spent.
Yeah, but you know what? And by the way, this is absolutely not a diss on Ginger at all. She was hiking her hike. Yeah. And unfortunately, you were hiking her hike as well. And that, that isn't the way to do it. So you made that decision. And I know you must have been upset with that. What's the plan? So you've gone on, you're now, I'm trying to think where Lyme, New Hampshire is. I'm trying to work out exactly where you came on the trail.
It's a day's hike through Hanover, so you're almost to the Vermont border.
All right, okay, fine.
So I got a shuttle down to Lyme, and I've been out here now for 3 days. It feels like a month. It's difficult to get into towns to resupply, so I'm just kind of carrying through for the week, unless I can find something at the state park, and then,
it's a test.
Then at the end of the week,
there's no question.
Yeah,
and you're finding out it is a test. You knew it already. It was a test of that, but you know what?
Yeah, I did know it was a test, but I can tell you that there were a couple of things that have really challenged me just in this hike in Vermont, and that is, first of all, the big flat pack, followed by having to make the decision that I was going to have to skip, 100 miles of the Whites, which is against, one of my goals. But I also had to remember that I had other goals for this trip. Yeah. And that was
staying alive for a start.
To stay alive and safe and to, enjoy the trip, and why do it if you can't find something to enjoy? And I really having to be intentional out here in Vermont. And I'm thinking, I'm hiking in autumn in Vermont and I need to stay positive. Yeah. But it is taking a lot of my energy to do that. And I think once I finish this section and I'm down, heading north from the Irwin, Tennessee area, heading north, I'll feel like I'm kind of on my last leg home. I'll feel that could be interpreted both ways.
But yeah, you read into that whatever you wish.
Yeah. But I'll be on my way home, and I'll be in areas that I've hiked before, and it will feel. I'll feel like I'm at home almost. Yes. So I think that's a good thing.
So this has happened and so on. Did you consider quitting totally?
No, but I do about every 5 minutes now.
Oh, not that often then.
No, I just feel like I want to see this through, and it would be easy to say I'm done, but I really kind of, I'm in this place where I want to see it through. And yes. I think once I get to the area near Irwin and get back on, I'm pretty sure I'll be able to finish in 5 weeks. So,
wow. Well, Jester and I tried to do the John Muir Trail, and we both, after 3 days, we kind of almost gave each other a reason to quit. And of course I regret it and she regrets it, but we made the right decision for us. And it's something you just said that struck me, which was that unless you're enjoying this, it is absolutely not worth doing at all. You've got to be having fun, or not so much having fun, but really getting something from the trip. See, you sound like you're still getting something from the trip. We were just getting exhausted from the trip and depleted, and so we just felt we just had to give up. But in your case, you've had that thought and you fight through that thought. Are you hiking with anybody else now, or are you by yourself?
No, and there, I realize that there have been. Only a few people who I've hiked with that it really felt sustainable. And maybe that's me. I don't know. But you are so right about how easy it is to give up your own hike.
Yes.
Because I think when you get in that partnership with another hiker, you feel a commitment to support them in some way. And so you might do things that, even if you're saying no, and then they say, well, I'm doing it, and okay. And I'm thinking, oh, man.
Yeah, you know what? But, and you're, I'm glad you're aware of it as well, because it's important to do that. And when Trigger and I hiked the last 1,700 miles together, for about 300 miles, we were hiking Cushy's hikes, what Cushy wanted to do. We said, yeah, we'll go along with that. That's great. But I always said to Cushy, we know we're hiking your hike, and I'm okay with that. But when I'm ready to hike my own hike, I would then, because they were pulling me on. They were better hikers than me. They were seen to be stronger than me, and they were pulling me on. I strengthened up as time went on. But after we split, and we met up with Cushy again later, after we split, I knew I was hiking my hike, and Trigger was with me. He wanted to finish with me, but I was always going to do what I want to do, because there is a point at which you have to say, right, this is what I'm going to do now. And whether you're involved with other people in a group, you've got to do what's best for you. Especially now, you're at this leg of your journey, which you can see that you now can see the end in sight for you, which is a wonderful thing to have. So I'm glad you made that decision.
Yeah. And, that's how it was, with Ginger. I thought about it as I was supposed to be sleeping that night. and I just woke up the next morning and I said, I'm not doing it,
good.
and I said, it's not safe. I don't feel it's the right thing for me to do.
You know what?
So,
I'm glad you, I presume you're part of his friends. I'm glad that's okay.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, good. Because
I don't want
I don't want anybody to think that this is a knock on Ginger at all. This is just Katie making it's Katie making her own decision to hike for her own hike. And anybody out there who's going to go in 2022, there will come a point when all of you will have to make that decision yourself.
Oh yeah,
and you've got to stick with it as well. Okay, well look, I'm glad you're okay. I know Vermont is tough. Have you been over Killington yet?
I'm right there. Yeah, I'm close.
Enjoy.
Yeah. All right.
No, it's okay. It's okay. You know, it's just a long bloody way.
Yeah.
So
hey.
But make sure you carry on with your hike and enjoying it. And we'll catch up again next week. Okay.
All right. Thanks, Steve.
Cheers, then. Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
I am so glad that she made that call. It isn't the easiest thing to do, especially considering the blood, sweat and tears you've poured into the hike. Yet, as she said, if you're not having fun, and it wouldn't have been fun for those 4 or 5 days, then making the call and doing what you want to do is the way forward. I'm hoping that this reset enhances her enjoyment of the trip. Thanks this week goes to our wonderful donors who buy into the idea of providing value for value. This week, recurring friends of the show are Ann Dobson, Mike DiCello, Terry Hackler, Jenny Grunke, Brian Helton Jr., Lisa Rana and Erskine Bass, while Jens Lipperheider and William Matthews have also donated once more. Additionally, Monique Hiju has donated to our shows, adding, "Thanks for all your work for making such a great podcast. I listened a lot while hiking the 44-mile MST challenge this month. We'll continue listening. Cheers to you, Jester." So, one of Jester's fans. Happy to hear from you, Monique, and all of you have stepped up. Don't forget, if you'd like to donate, you can find loads of buttons on the hikingradionetwork.com website, where all 6 shows are together for your listening pleasure. Now, just before we hear from Winton Porter's book, Passing Through, I thought I'd share something with you. Do you remember a few weeks back when we had Chris Casado on the show? Well, I thought very long and hard about it, but I wanted to let you all know, and I'm not sure I necessarily should be announcing this yet, that I'm going to be hitting his Trans-Sierra Challenge Trail and hopefully going to summit Mount Whitney at long last this year. I'm going to podcast from the trail and, well, I'm beyond excited that I'll be going. And this year, my partner is going to be not Jester, but Dana, my girlfriend. She has never hiked in her life. She never wanted to hike, but she really wants to be there when I take my picture on the top of Whitney. Not sure how we're going to do it, but we're sure going to try. So now, to close out the show, here is Snow Day at Mountain Crossings. I'll see you next week. Chapter 8, Snow Day. Standing guard at the front walkway, her muzzle specked with frost, Skydog monitors a bustling winter scene. The parking lot is full and children are spread across the front lawn, building snowmen, carving angels with their bodies, packing snowballs. The snowball throwers are posted to each side of the stone stairs, and every adult is fair game. I'm no exception. Halfway up, I get pelted across the cheek from the right by a frigid blast from a 5-year-old girl with blonde hair. She wears a pink jacket and matching jester hat with gold bells dangling from the many points. I turn, wipe my face, and with a squinty grin ask her, "Do I know you?" She delivers a dimpled, gappy smile and informs me plainly, "No, it's Snow Day. You don't have to know me." Fair enough. I scoop snow from the ground, pack it quickly before she can escape, and return fire. Skydog joins in the folly before she quite knows whose side she's on, bunny hopping through the deep drifts. She chases me a few steps, then turns and goes after my jingling opponent. My daughter, little Sierra, shoots out howling through the front door of the shop and takes sides with the jester, and together they mount a frontal assault. Outnumbered and outmanoeuvred, I try to counter, but my cause is hopeless. I take 2 in the chest, cry out desperately, and fall wounded. The 2 girls climb onto my back and triumphantly bury my head in the snow. I call for reinforcements. Skydog, sounding the bark of the cavalry charge, jumps on my back and sends the girls somersaulting into retreat. After I rise to my feet, slowly and groaning, while the victorious girls laugh at me, I brushed the snow from my nylon coat and promised them, in my best pirate voice, "I'll get you next time, mateys. I will get you next time." Sierra jumps onto my leg and hugs it, hanging on like a monkey to a tree. "Daddy, please stay and play with me, please." She comes up with an excuse for me. "It's a snow day. You don't have to work." That voice, that smile, those curly locks are hard to resist, but I must. I stump along for a few steps and then start peeling her off. She's as sticky as bubblegum. When I break her grip on my leg, I find her now swinging from my hands. Eventually, I settle on tucking her under one arm and tickling her with the other. "Dear," I say during this little wrestle, "I would love nothing more, but I must work today. Maybe next time." Tickled out, she drops to the ground, stamps her foot, pouts, then sticks out her tongue and runs off with her new friend. The shop is packed with customers and guests. I nudge through the crowd to the counter and tuck myself in behind it with Buddy, whose face is a useful instrument. It can register a whole range of colours from pink to purple, the precise shade depending on the number and mood of customers. Right now, it's a good, rich crimson, which means a lively day for business, and he gives me a quick rundown. Nate's taking care of a shakedown in the back with a guy who actually seems to know what he's doing. And the ambulance is here for some guy named Ricky, not Tony. And we got a report that some kid poured a bucket of snow in one of the toilets. "Thanks, I think," I tell him as I inch away from the counter. "Oh, and one more thing," Buddy says. "Felicity's out on the porch trying to convince someone's wife that her husband and child are running late and not frozen dead on the trail." "Did you hear the woman's name? The one with Felicity?" "Bridget." Stepping out again onto the front walkway, I notice Billy in the garden, taking cover behind a silver trash can. He has picked a snowball fight with an army of little people in bright, puffy clothing. By the 2 5-gallon buckets full of ammo beside him, it's evident that Billy has planned his battle carefully. He's inflicting heavy casualties when Sierra springs from behind a fence post and gives him a beardful. He goes sprawling and they all scream like fools. It's 10:50 in the morning and the temperature has risen to about 34 degrees. Soon they will be running out of snow. I think growing up is truly a waste of precious time. Felicity is one part wildflower, the other part bobcat. Slight in stature, with a petite nose speckled with fading freckles of summers past, Felicity is, as her name suggests, a woman who brings happiness to those around her by always being her own person. Looking at her, dressed as usual in a nonchalant array of fleece, nylon and hiking boots, few would know that she used to be a goth girl, and few would expect this diminutive young woman to be as tough as she is. But those who have crossed her, male or female, have witnessed her steely stare and stepped back from her fiery personality. She draws comfort from the care of her young son, 6 at the time of this writing, plus a keen interest in naturalistic and spiritualistic topics such as astrology and New Age philosophy. Her trail name is Cola Monkey, which is a product of her addiction to Coca-Cola. The tall, slender woman beside Felicity is Bridget, who appears to be in her late 30s. She has pale hair the colour of maplewood, cropped straight across just below her eyes. Her lips are trembling in the cold, and her eyes show the nervous weariness of a concerned mother. Bridget drove up this morning to pick up her husband and son, who went out on an overnight hike. She waited in the parking lot for an hour, reading a book in the driver's seat, and then came into the store, upset. "I need help. My family, where are they? They must be in trouble. They were supposed to be here over 2 hours ago. What should I do?" she yelled, and my staff calmed her down. She had stayed up most of the night worrying, she said. This was her son's first camping trip, and the last time her husband went camping was more than 30 years ago. She tried to describe the neon-coloured pack her husband was wearing and noted that before they came up to the mountains, they got brand new Walmart sleeping bags that were really lightweight. A lightweight sleeping bag probably made for an uncomfortable night, and it has been a very long time since good hiking equipment was regularly manufactured in neon colours. But there was no reason to panic. The staff gave her coffee and got her to wait another 20 minutes before she stormed into the store again. Now she's out on the patio and Felicity is calming her down. "When was the last time you spoke with them?" Felicity asks. "This morning, about, 7 o'clock. "What did they say?" "They said it was cold and they were on their way out. Then the cell phone went dead and I tried to call them back." Felicity knows the Blood Mountain terrain better than most. She flips open her cell phone to check the time. It reads 10:53. "You dropped them off at Woody Gap yesterday, right? What time?" "Yes, about 12. Why?" "If you dropped them off at noon yesterday at Woody Gap, they would have made it to at least Bird Gap, which is about 5 miles in from where they started, Felicity says. If they left Bird Gap at 7 o'clock this morning, considering the conditions, they should arrive here in the next 30 minutes to an hour. Felicity tosses in the extra half hour for cushion. What is more important is that we know that they are moving. That means they will be all right. Hikers who die in the middle of the trail get passed and noticed by other hikers. So do hikers who collapse from hypothermia. Since no one has rushed in this morning to tell us that a man and a boy are dying in their tracksuits in the woods, since in fact all of the latest customers have told us they've seen 2 people fitting the man and boy's description alive and still trudging along, we have every reason to expect that the woman's family will be fine. There are better and worse ways of getting this point across, of course. I'm glad that Felicity has managed to do it without using the word hypothermia or collapse or dead. Trouble would have worked well enough. That's a phrase I use a lot in these situations. If they were in trouble, we would have heard by now. I take a place in the chimenea. For the 3rd time this morning, Bridget refuses my offer of a bagel. Felicity and I have nothing to do but to wait with her, and as parents ourselves, to share her ache. We are confident that our husband and son will be out soon, but it's too much to hope that our confidence will rub off on Bridget. It's not a pleasant thing to tell a mother just to wait for her son's safe return. The odds are very good, but it's not my child or Felicity's child we've entrusted to the odds. My child is playing with other kids, a snowball throwaway. Bridget's child is still in the woods, and she's not really interested in calculating his chances against frostbite, snakebite, bear attack, dirty water, rock slide or lightning strike. Hiking is about managing these risks. Parenting, the fantasy of parenting, is about reducing risks to nothing. Mercifully, the wait soon ends, when 4 figures with backpacks come marching down the few final yards of the mountain before crossing the road. One is a young child, maybe 9 or 10, only a few years older than little Sierra. I cross the front of the building and descend the long stairs to greet them. The little boy crosses the road on the heels of his father, like a mindful duckling. But once they reach the parking lot, he playfully pushes his father aside and gallops past him, as if trying to touch the imaginary finish line first. The boy reaches the stairs and pauses there when I call out to his father. "You wouldn't happen to be the husband of a Miss Bridget?" "Yes, is she still here?" He's exhausted and ashamed. I remember Preacher Man's honest words. I made a few mistakes. "She's on the porch, and I believe that she will be very, very happy to see you both. Follow me." The boy speaks up brightly. "Mum's here, Dad? Hope she brought me some more Oreo cookies." "That would be nice," the man says. Then, "Did you have a good time, Joey?" The father's fear, and I felt it too, is that his child will not forgive him. But Joey sees nothing to forgive. "It was the best. I never saw so much snow." He leaps up the stairs and runs ahead in search of his mum. "Past the front door, Joey. She's on the deck," I shout. I stop at the door and the man stops beside me. He is delaying his reunion with his wife, allowing his little soldier time to work some magic. To assist him in this thoughtful tactic, I introduce myself and offer my hand. "Hi, my name's Winton. Where are you folks from?" "Oh, yeah, my name's Tony, and we're from Florida, up for the weekend." I figure they ought to hold me for a while. We let a few seconds tick by while Joey disappears around the corner. We hear his piping voice telling Bridget about adventures. "Would you like a cup of coffee, Tony?" "Ah, yeah, that would be nice, thank you." "Sugar? Cream?" "Splendor if you got it." "Perfect." I give him a pat on the shoulder. "Why don't you check in with your wife? I'll bring a cup right out." I stumble back inside through a jostling crowd of customers, many of them lined up at the counter with new gloves and hats in their hands. Just behind me come 2 hikers trying to shove their way in with their packs still on. Buddy lets them have it. Hey, you two, what's the matter with you boys? You're knocking people left and right. Get those packs back outside, fellas, before you knock over one of these pretty ladies." The 2 men make an immediate about-face and slink out. The crowd watches silently. The customers closest to the cash register seem to stand up a little straighter. I break the silence in my best southern drawl. "Hey, Buddy, put a little more Georgia in that jersey, would you?" Buddy snickers and helps himself to the last word. "I said please, didn't I?" Felicity sneaks up from behind and taps me on the shoulder as I pour coffee. "Do you want me to get that?" "Yes, it's for the husband. Thanks. Splendor," he said. "Why don't you grab a pack of Oreos and a Blood Mountain patch for Joey?" "No problem. Thank you for taking care of Bridget. It was better you than me." "No kidding." "Maybe we'll give Buddy the next one," I say, and hope Buddy hears me. Soon after, I pour another cup of coffee for my friend Cimarron, who's coming in on his second through hike. He'd turned 82 years old on his last one. He is having some problems with his pack and needs some adjustments. We managed to get a few more pounds out of his bag while we're at it. Cimarron still stands a pretty straight 5'9", and his well-planted silver hair still sprouts in every direction, like Einstein's, only his hearing has gotten old. "What are you doing out there again?" I scream at him. "Can't stand sitting around the house," he responds, as he pours a cup of coffee and sips thoughtfully. "Family thinks I'm crazy, I think. But when you reach my age, they call it eccentric. It's like a free pass for crazy for the rest of your life." He speaks slowly and in broken rhythms, taking pauses for breath in mid-speech. The effect of this is to make him sound somewhat puzzled, but in a good-natured way. The world is getting to be too much for him, but he doesn't blame anybody for it. "How's the body holding out?" "Good. I feel it a little more, but I'm not as young as I was last year." He takes another sip from his silver cup and winks. "Well, you certainly are an inspiration for all of us. How far are you headed tomorrow?" "As far as my feet will take me. If by chance you see me lying on the trail, just push me over the edge so I'm not blocking anybody's path." I tell him I'll spread the word, and we laugh. Some day-trip tourists shopping for T-shirts and refrigerator magnets seem unnerved by Cimarron's sense of humour. He toasts them with his coffee cup. Joey follows his parents as they wander a few turns through the gift shop. He stops when he finds an illustrated trail guide, then sits on the floor eating cookies, looking at pictures of other adventures. Apparently, any worries his parents may have had about today's expedition are far from his mind.